Hey there, everybody. I've got my hand here, which is going to represent one paragraph about one question. Question 25 is going to basically be asking for a central idea of a paragraph. When you think of the thumb and you turn it this way, that's your topic sentence. In reading, it's normally the first sentence. Not always, but normally. It's the main idea of the paragraph. In revising, they sometimes put one that's too vague, or there's not one at all. And so it's like, instead of saying that you're all thumbs, you're no thumb. And you have to add a topic sentence main idea to a paragraph. In fact, for those of you who are in CREST online training, when we get to those questions on the revising, any question that was asking about an entire paragraph or an entire passage, a beginning, a middle, and an end, introduction, body, or conclusion, those questions did poorly because the students had to understand how they all tied together. So we're going to take a look at a question that did poorly in 10th grade, and the answer choices should have been obvious if the students did any underlining or labeling of keywords from each sentence in the paragraph, because if the paragraph doesn't tell you about a specific content, then it wouldn't be a good answer. So let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'm going to show you which one I'm talking about. This was question number 25 on the 10th grade test. So if you look at it, it asks about one paragraph. So what should you do? You should do something that allows structure, a certain systematic checklist to follow. And I shouldn't be changing every single time. So I'm going to use the one that I've showed you several times. Rules. Are they following your rules? So as we read this question, we're going to go to the passage and read how the question, the keywords in the question relate to it, and we'll underline in both places, label in both places, so that we'll be able to eliminate the three answers that we think are wrong. So when you look at this, and I'm going to scroll down and then scroll back up so you can see what I'm talking about. Let me use my eraser for those two marks that I made there. Let me go ahead and show you below. This question was student expectation 6C. It got 41% correct in Texas from the English 2 from this past year. As you can see, letter B is correct. A, B, and C, A, C, and D are incorrect. And you can spend your time looking at that. But I think I would rather spend the time showing you without the answers or the justification why one answer is better than the other one. So the first step was to say, let's read the question. Use millennials so happy together to answer the following question. So when you had a paired passage, make sure you get to the right pair of shoes. In paragraph 9, opening bracket, bracket in or box in paragraph 9. And the reason I like to use box sometimes is because they sell these little boxes at Dollar Tree and they're very colorful, red, yellow, blue, green, like the colors we've used a lot in some of the videos you watched. But they also have like purple and pink and other things. There's tends to be about 8 different colors. And so if you divide your selection, your passage by sections, you can box them in by the different colors that you happen to find in those Dollar Tree boxes that actually open up, and you can place one Smartie inside each box for each important detail that you find. So since we're only using one paragraph, we would only use one box, one color. So let's see what the question says so we can look up anything that supports that question and the answer choices. In paragraph 9 of the excerpt of the article, Millennials, which is the one that we're talking about there, so happy together, when we're talking about there, the topic and the title, I put the T above my head right there, all right? Why? They're asking for a reason, and so remember that all questions are based on the 6+1 W's. Who, what, when, where, why, which, and how. Does the author point out the difference in how? So they point out the difference in how Gen X and my little stick man here, millennial children were parented. Okay. How were they parented? How were they raised? How were they brought up? So if I was to just go ahead and get rid of some of that so that you can read, then in order to choose the answers, then we actually have to take a look and see, well, what exactly did the paragraph talk about in terms of Gen X kids and millennial kids? Why am I asking that? Because they said in the question, the difference. Okay. So whenever you're pointing out a difference, you could make sure your kids understand right away, what does difference mean? Difference mean that you're comparing and contrasting, and that there's a transition between those two ideas. So keeping that in mind, I went ahead and used the redevising graphic organizer to lay out paragraph 9 for you, so you can see one way how to use it, because a ton of you already have it, and it's just a very simple tool that shows a way to teach the understanding of the main idea of a paragraph, specifically comparing and contrasting. All right. So when we look at the graphic organizer, I intentionally left a line blank to allow you to say which question number is this that we're talking about. It's question number 25. It's about paragraph number 9. And you have to look at 3 things. What is the topic sentence slash main idea over here? And how does it transition? And there you can see my teeter-totter, compare, contrast, the millennials and the Gen X's with its specific supporting sentences. And the ring, pointer, middle, ring finger, and pinky are the specific supporting sentences. So when you look at keywords and hashtag, if you want to call it that, let's look and see what they said. The topic sentence, the main idea said millennials, nothing about Gen X. A, they don't mind sharing spaces, and B, they don't mind depending on others. That means what they're saying is everything that we tell you in this paragraph is going to be about that topic, that idea. So let's look for some examples. Why did I put a B on the pointer finger? Because this detail, this dum-dum, this smarty was about letter B, but they don't mind depending on others. Why should you own a car? We can get Uber and Lyft. Why should I buy a dress? We can rent one. We can allow other people to do that. Nothing about the concept of Gen X yet. Why pay for a kitchen? It's less expensive to share. Sharing A. They trust this setup. The special care they've received since birth. Others look out for their best interests. Well, when you're sharing things with people, other people are going to look out for your best interest. When you don't mind depending on others, you've been cared for since birth. So all of the first three fingers were used to say, this is how the millennials were raised. We do a lot of sharing and a lot of depending on others. So inside that same paragraph, here's the transmission moving from this place to this place, or the transition. The Gen X had no one to look after them. You're all on your own, dude. And that was basically what they said. So the only answers that we can choose are the answers that stay within this content, that stay within this meaning. And so most of you received a hard copy of this who are in the CREST online training, editing and revising, and there's another one for reading. So in the same way, whether you're doing editing or revising, you have to do all of these things in order to make your way through the question. What I wanted to show you was on the back portion, there's something named Mrs. P.V.C. The process of elimination. If anything changes the meaning or something is missing from the content, then you use these little E hairs that she has and change the meaning, eliminate. If there's too much repetition or a run-on, that's an elimination. Is the sentence that they give you an example missing a subject? If it is it not specific enough, yes or no, then eliminate it. Because we're typically going to eliminate 3 and select 1 about 90% of the time now on STAR. They'll sometimes be 2 correct, so they have to remember that we're going to go green sometimes in 2 and possibly 3 answers in this new format. The P.V.C. If we're doing revising, is it missing the predicate? The editing has to have a predicate. Does the point of view or perspective change? Eliminate it. Are the verb tenses not there correctly? Did it change past to present? Is the content, is the answer choice too vague? And the most important one for this question, did it change the content? Was it about what they were talking about? And if, and of course, it's an editing question or a revising question, if the cups, if the capitalization, usage, punctuation, or spelling are written incorrectly in the answer choice, then you automatically have to eliminate it. So what shall we do? Let's keep what we just read in mind. I'll stop sharing and then go back over here to our answer choices. And you can make sure I'm back here with you guys. I went out of my Zoom lesson for a second there. Share my screen. Basic. And the actual question. Okay. There we are. So again, why does the author point out the difference in how the Gen X and the millennials were being raised? Well, to explain, or the explaining, yes, information was being given, it was explained. Why do millennials want the convenience of working anytime, day or night? Was the subject about millennials? My little stick man? Yes, but nothing was written about working day or night and comparing that to how Gen X kids were parented, because this is where the keywords from the question are at. How are these two concepts different? All right. B, to examine, in other words, to look more closely, why millennials, they seek to be more dependent. Okay. Well, since one of the two answer choices was about their dependence on others, since 4 of the 5 fingers were about millennials, supervised work and living spaces, that they were sharing living spaces, they were talking about not necessarily, I don't remember the supervised work, but I remember that they talked about their parents watching out for their needs since birth. So work doesn't necessarily always mean in a job situation. It could be working anywhere. You work at home, but even getting to work, you want to think of that. They were using Uber. So we can kind of give a partial credit there. I'm not going to give a complete check. To question why millennials do not mind community policing. Since, yes, they were talking about millennials, but they were not talking about community policing at all in that paragraph. It might have been somewhere else. Then you're going to eliminate that answer choice. To understand, I'm going to draw my little head here. When I understand something, my brain, my thoughts and my opinions grow about some topic. Why millennials are our subject? Yes. So we're talking about millennials. Prefer a safety net in case they cannot achieve their goals. There was nothing about a safety net, and they never mentioned anything about goals. So what was going to have to happen is when your kids were making the comparison, because Generation X was mentioned only in one sentence, the pinky. Their focus in the answer choices was, how is that different? Well, it would have been better if they would have at least explained how the Generation X kids did depend on themselves. Um, but yes, there is a difference. If you look at the keywords in the question right here, you go ahead and spotlight for you right here, the difference in millennial kids was all of these things in letter B. That's different from Generation X. So if the answer choices would have said, okay, here's all about Generation X, and here's all about the millennials, it would have been okay. But I think because they spend 80% of the time in the paragraph talking about millennials, it did make more sense. The points that they brought up about the millennials in letter B were all true and mentioned inside the passage. So using the revising graphic organizer, the Mrs. P.V.C, the little checklist, the answer is probably based on a very high, and do that, a very high possibility, because what they were asking about was very obvious. They only wanted to know the comparisons of the millennials here, focusing in on them, since they were the main idea of the paragraph. And it was the true things that they share their, the second finger, the third finger was talking about let's share a kitchen, and the second finger talked about how they rely on people for travel and even for the clothes that they dress. And the fourth finger brought all that together and talked about how everyone watched out for their every need as they were growing up. So since that's the best answer, nothing else in the answer choices would have made sense to pick. So that's what I would have done using the tools that I've given you. If you are a high school teacher, I would suggest you share that. That was the lowest performing reading question. And if you're in our revising online CREST training, I'll be using, since the high school released uh, their itemized analysis, I'll be able to tell, at least for 10th grade, because I have that one, which revising questions were the most difficult. If one of you has access to, as a parent, the 9th grade, I could use that one, and also the 8th grade. I would just need to be able to get in and kind of look at the data, and so I can help you. I don't want you to have to wait another month for the big boss in Austin to release the test, so that you have to wait another month to figure out strategies that will work. So do me a favor, please share this video. The idea is that if your students can draw a hand and they quickly hashtag on that hand, they can even draw a hand on the paragraph itself and say, okay, all of these sentences are like fingers on the hand, and that's what the actual content was. We eliminate anything that had nothing to do with content. In other words, they were great fingers, but they belonged on someone else's hand, not the hand about millennials being dependent on others and being willing to share living spaces, workspaces. So take care. We'll see you on our next video. I'll make my way back down to third, fourth, and fifth grade over the next couple of days, and then we'll see some on seventh and 10th, so we can get someone to get us a copy of the eighth and ninth grade. Take care and God bless.